I was asked the other day about repotting Venus flytraps. When's the best time? What do I use? What kind of pots do I use? Media, etc. And I thought I'd give a little talk on that. I recently got in a couple of Venus flytraps from a grower whose tag I'll hide here. And you see the size pot that's used for an early young plant. It's a pretty small plant at this point, so they can have a small pot. Next step up would be this type of pot. This is about 5 inches, 4 inches. This is what I'm using on most of my traps now. This is about a 6 to 7 inch pot and white, so it reflects some of the heat. And it gives me enough depth where the roots can spread out on a Venus flytrap. So those are the ones I'm going to be using on what I'm going to do today. Let's start doing some repotting. I was talking a little bit about why I repot. I don't have to repot every year. I do repot if I find that the media is stinky, and this is nice. If I find that, in this case, the media has sunk or has become quite moldy or weedy. I've got weeds in here that this will just get refreshed, some new media. This one obviously has got some sinking, and I want to make sure that's cleaned up. And this one I'm going to put into a bigger pot. This is a ginormous plant. The size of the traps will get large, and I want to give it a little bit more room to grow. What do I want in my potting media? Well, I like my mix what I call loose. And loose is, I don't want to be able to take and clump like this. I want it to be so that it falls apart. And in doing that, that's going to give the roots more ability to go through the media without restriction and go down into the deeper part of the pot. So my potting mix, what am I going to do? 1, 2, perlite, 1 scoop. Pool sand, coarse, coarser if you can get it, 1 scoop. So I have peat, sand, perlite. Now the next thing is to rinse this and get it ready for potting. So this is my mix of peat, perlite, and sand. I have mixed it, I have rinsed it, and I have filled one of the pots with it. The other potting media that I use is sphagnum moss. Sphagnum moss is kind of a new method of growing, and what the idea is that the roots will be able to grow through here easier than it can through the peat mix. I am not fully convinced of that. I think a good loose mix will work just about as well. Plus, this is a lot more expensive. The peat perlite sand is very, very cheap. And I will use sphagnum moss in some cases. In fact, I'll show you what I'm going to do on that also. I've pulled the ginormous from the pot, and you can see I've got roots down here. These are not flytrap roots. These are this nasty little weed. That weed gets into, especially the sphagnum moss, and I've gone to boiling my sphagnum for about 5 minutes, or heating the water, letting it sit in that boiled water for 5 minutes before I do anything with it. That has helped to reduce, but not fully eliminated, the weeds. So when I start pulling this apart, you can see I've got a nice big rhizome, the bulb-like thing here. And I've got have my handy scissors that I get in here and clip away the dead. And it's just, I have a saying, if it's brown, cut it down. Well, this is black, so it's gone beyond brown, so it's gone. And if I put on a pair of glasses, I can see what I'm doing. I have 3 pair of reading glasses here, different strengths for seeing different things, so I make sure I know what I'm doing. Spider web here, sorry there buddy, but you're moving out. All right, so this is clipped down to a manageable point. What do I find in here? You see I've got the growth going off one direction, and I could take right now and I could split this into 2 plants. But I think for fun, for me anyway, I'm going to take and I'm going to leave this as 1 plant. And this is going to continue to grow out this side and continue to expand in the pot. So this is what the Venus Flytrap looks like when it's out of the pot. You have the trap, you got the leaves, and you have the rhizome here. And again, where I put the rhizome in the soil is to about this depth, so that this is above and this is below. Here's the roots, the black roots on this, and I want to give them room to expand, which is why I use a pot that is probably 25–50% larger than what the roots are. So if I've got a 4-inch pot and I've got 3-inch roots, I'm still okay. But when I get into the 3.5-inch, 4-inch roots, they're going into a 5-inch deep pot. So I got my pot, and if you have seen any of my tool videos, you should check that out. Got the little spade here. Hello, clock. Slide that off to the side to give it some room. This is really kind of bigger than I wanted to play with at this point, but where to put my other little tool? That's the way it goes. There it is. This tool I'm going to use to give me the depth for the roots. You can see my roots, when I get this in here, are going to be not to the bottom, but you can see that it's deeper than this pot. So it was a good time to move this thing into a bigger, deeper pot. And again, the white should help with the reducing the heat on the roots, hopefully. All right, so now I've got this cut, the dirt set up. I've got, using my long tweezers, I'm just going to aid this to go down. I'm not pulling it, I'm just assisting it to go down into the pot. And what depth? I'm going to tilt this slightly, and I'm going to go to about here. Where it comes out and starts to split up into the leaves, that is the top of the plant, top of the rhizome. That's the depth I want. So I push that in and around. That is planted. Now that I've got the plant in the pot and I've got a pretty good mix, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to top it with some sand. This will help reduce the little moss that grows up there, commonly called the nose hair moss, and may help reduce some fly infestation in there. And I really kind of still watch the depth of the plant and the sand, and I can always make adjustments if I need. So now that sand is going to help keep the plant clean. It's still going to be able to come up with new offshoots there, but it'll eliminate or reduce the moss that'll grow, giving that thing a lot cleaner look. The second method of potting up a Venus flytrap is to wrap the roots and the rhizome into sphagnum moss. So I'm going to take a little bit of the sphagnum and just kind of wrap the rhizome, wrap the roots. And what this does is it protects everything, as well as gives it the roots a good start. As they start to expand, start to grow, that's going to help them out. So now what I've done is I've got my pot with the peat perlite mixture, and I got a pretty big gap in the middle there. Hopefully you can see that. So I'm going to take my little bundle of joy here in the diaper, and I'm going to plop it down in here. The roots should stay in better straight shape, and that allows them to feed right into it. And again, I want to get it to about the right depth for the rhizome to be topped at the point it needs to. Get my peat firmed around there. Make sure you always put your label in there. This one needs to get updated. And then I'm going to take and top up with the sand again. And that sand is going to keep everything nice and clean. That's the second method that I use for my potting up my fly traps. The third one is just going to be sphagnum moss, and let's get to that one. The last method of potting that I'm going to do or show is the full sphagnum moss. So I'm going to just take a whole group of wet sphagnum moss, plop into my container. A mix that you could be using with this is the sphagnum moss and perlite. Give it a little bit of pockets of air in there. I think that works out well too. That's what I use in my nepenthes, and I think it would work out fine here. So once you've got your moss in there, then it's to create a little hole in here. And you could use that same method of wrapping the roots and the rhizome with the sphagnum moss and insert in there. That would work quite well also. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to stick it in directly now that I've got my hole in there. So I'm going to take my tweezers and I'm going to grab the roots. And again, I'm going to guide, not pull. I don't want to break the roots. I just want to make sure the roots get down in there. Once the roots are in, then it's just to push the sphagnum moss around the rhizome. This is a much faster way as far as what you're doing to it. But again, if you've got a lot of plants to do, I think my favorite way is just the peat perlite method. So get that in there, get it pushed in, top up with some more sphagnum if needed, just keeping aware of where your rhizome depth is. And I do not top up this one with sand. So keep an eye on it to see if any weeds start growing and pull them out, because those roots get really entangled in with the flytrap roots, and that's not what you want. And again, put in your label. And that is 3 different methods of potting Venus flytrap. My favorite is the pure perlite, peat, and sand. This one also works out well with the sphagnum wrap around the roots into the peat And then there's this method here. They're ready to go into sunshine if we ever get some, and hopefully have a good growing season.